Here in Britain, we're going to get the debate underway right now. In a moment, we'll be hearing from Carole Bell from AmericansAwayFromHome.com. She's going to be speaking for Barack Obama. But let's join John McCain's representative for this programme. That's George Ajjan, who's in New York. George, good to see you.
Likewise, very nice to be with you.
You've decided, or at least your candidate decided, to go ahead with this debate. Why all the faffing around? Correct. He was always going to do it, wasn't he?
It's hard to say, you know, what's actually in the person's heart versus what's politically expedient. I think there's still a great deal of trepidation and uncertainty in the hearts of Americans with respect to the financial crisis. But it looks like all signals are go for tonight's debate, and I think it'll be somewhat up to the discretion of the moderators. As you know, there's a whole bureaucracy in the United States just for the administration of presidential debates. So perhaps the moderators will steer the discussion away from foreign policy, as you mentioned, and towards the financial crisis, which is really on the minds of Americans.
They kind of got to deal with it, haven't they? Don't you think?
Yeah, there's got to be some discussion of that, and you know, though the terms were set, I would imagine that both campaigns agreed that there will have to be some discussion of the financial crisis tonight. I'd be very surprised if that didn't come up, at least to some extent. Perhaps they'll deal with that in the beginning or towards the end, without detracting too much from the overall focus, which was foreign policy, because naturally each candidate wants to point out his differences with his opponent on foreign policy, because there are many.
Indeed so, and we will come on to that in just a second. But let me just deal with this, the latest episode in this financial crisis and where we are. Do you buy this story, which is being spun, I suppose, heavily by both campaigns, that in a way McCain's playing this canny and he's there in them, that he's actually got the House Republicans to play tough guy and hardball with this in order that he suddenly emerges, who knows when, tomorrow, as the Mr. Fix-It and sorts the whole thing out? Is this being staged?
Perhaps with amongst a lot, but McCain has had his differences over the years with the Republican base, and particularly with conservatives. So the idea that they're going to go in line and conduct an elaborate ruse just to benefit him, I think is a bit far-fetched, to be honest.
Okay, so in a sense they're doing his campaign damage, aren't they?
Perhaps. Remember, their responsibilities to their own constituents. They've got to worry about their own re-elections in the November election. This is not just the presidential. 1/3 of the members of the United States Senate and every single one of the 435 members of the House of Representatives is up for re-election. A lot of those people have to be concerned about their own futures.
Okay, just to explain to you, George, Carole is on her way here. She's just been delayed a little bit in the London traffic, so she'll join in and we'll give her her turn on all this. But let me get into the foreign affairs thing, and I suppose one of the big issues they're going to have to talk about if they get round to it will be the two wars. And President Bush indicating that by a very small measure, troops are going to be taken away from Iraq, where he's starting to say job done, and they're going to go to Afghanistan, where there's a big job still to do. Do you think your candidate, John McCain, can agree with that?
I think no matter who's elected, you will see some shifting of troops from Iraq to Afghanistan. And perhaps if Obama's elected, you'll see shifting of troops from Iraq to other places like Darfur. I think he may be more inclined to intervene in Darfur. I think whoever's the president, there's still the policy of intervention and American military presence on a large scale abroad is going to continue. It's just a matter of how the diplomacy is conducted, how aggressive the posturing is, and where the troops will actually be. But the idea that Obama's going to completely end the war in Iraq and change the policy of American military presence around the world is not really in touch with reality at all.
Interesting that as we speak, we have Condoleezza Rice just issuing statements concerning two other difficult parts of the world. The Russian agreement with the difficulties going on in Georgia and the Russian incursion into the two sub-provinces there, and the mention of North Korea. Let me just make sure I've got my quote right here. No new fresh sanctions on Iranian resolution. Unclear if powers will agree on those by the year end. She's dealing with a whole range of issues as we speak. A new UN resolution on Iran to send would signal powers that were united after the Russia tensions. There's a lot of things going on around the world. Deal with the North Korea thing, if you will. What does John McCain have to say to the American people about the potential threat from North Korea?
I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's sort of dropped off the radar screen of Americans. You know, in 2002, Bush launched his infamous axis of evil, which was Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. The North Korea file has really drifted from the minds of the public, and now the big issues, at least until last month, were Iraq and Iran, and now suddenly the Caucasus issue has arisen with the Russian incursion into the sub-provinces in Georgia that you mentioned. So I think you won't hear any dramatic statements or overcommitments from either candidate with respect to North Korea tonight, because that's just simply not on the front of Americans' minds. I think they're more interested in hearing about Iran, and they'll be interested to hear about the dealings with Russia.
Okay, George, I'm just going to ask you to put you on hold for a second here while we catch up
Sure.
with Carole. I guess they've organised the flights a little bit better for the real debate, and we won't have London traffic to deal with, but good to see you.
Thank you.
Carole, thank you very much indeed for being here. Carole Bell, she's from AmericansAwayFromHome.com, and she's speaking on behalf of Barack Obama. Now, while you were still in the car, we were just dealing with George there about some of the issues about, it's supposed to be about foreign affairs, so I'll come to that second. But I think we have to allow the candidate, i.e. you, to say a few words on the financial crisis. Now, what is going on? And do you think it's in everyone's interest that everyone gets together and sorts something out, whatever that final plan might be?
I think the most important word you said was everyone, because this is of worldwide importance. When Obama said the other day that all of us are intertwined around the world, indeed we are. So suddenly what happens, as he said in Boston, can affect what happens in Beijing in the reverse. And it's absolutely in everyone's interest, both Republicans, both Democrats, and frankly, the UK.
Does he
George
have
Bush,
to-
I think it'll be a compromise of all the parties involved.
Okay. And everybody can come out maybe, well, they'll all try and spin it their own way, won't they?
The losers are the American taxpayers unless we have in place certain kinds of guarantees.
Okay, let me get on to the foreign affairs, and here is one of the big issues which I think is facing both candidates. George Bush starting to make changes that the some troops are going to be winding things up in Iraq, and they're going to be moving to Afghanistan, because he's indicating there that that is a conflict which is going to go on for a longer time and it's worth fighting. What does Barack Obama say to that?
Obama has called for this in a greater detail, to a greater degree, for years now. McCain has flip-flopped back and forth, copying Obama. George Bush belatedly came to the party. We need a political solution, not a military solution. We need several more brigades in Afghanistan, which is what Obama has been proposing for 2 years.
That sounds like a military solution. Yeah.
That's the military.
Okay, now I'm trying to be the fair moderator here, so you've had your turn, George had his turn. George, I want you to do 30 seconds of rebuttal now, if you will, and we're going to carry on during the commercial break, which I've got to throw to after that. So have your 30 seconds now, George.
Sure. Well, let me just refer back to what Carole had said with respect to the $700 billion. First of all, it's going to be a lot more than $700 billion, because this is debt. In terms of a return on investment to the American people, we've still got to pay interest on all that. This is a very, very bad situation. I think there needs to be a lot more debate. And what the American people don't want to hear tonight is partisan bickering. You know, the Democrats' playbook has been very transparent. John McCain equals 4 more years of the last 8. That's not going to cut it. People want to hear a solution to this crisis. They don't want to hear that Bush is responsible for this entire financial meltdown, because that's not true at all. Republicans and Democrats alike had appointed and reappointed Alan Greenspan in his disastrous tenure at the Federal Reserve. So there's plenty of blame to be spread around here.
All right, that's the time up on that particular segment. We're going to give you guys about a minute each, or a minute of interchange, during the commercial break, which we're going to throw to right now. Here come the ads. All right, and online we're going to continue our discussion here. George Ajjan is still with us in New York, and it's Carole Bell from AmericansAway.home. What does Barack Obama have to do tonight vis-a-vis reassuring the American people that he can be the best presidential choice they could make?
I think he is the best presidential choice, and I think all he has to do to reassure people is to let them see what he is really like. This man has consulted with experts in every step of the way, in economics, in science, in all the fields that America needs help in. So he needs to reach out to people and show that what he has done is reached out to experts and to learn, as opposed to John McCain, who appears to have a little hot trigger finger. And he just goes ahead and spouts off things and then changes his mind and then flip-flops and then cancels and then schedules. You know, it's really not possible when you're president to suspend being president.
George, is he a flip-flopper, or is he a collegiate, good team player?
Well, I wouldn't say he's always a team player, because as I mentioned earlier, he's had more than his share of differences with the Republican base, and particularly with conservatives over the years. You know, over a more than 20-year record in Congress, going back to 1982, when he actually was against American intervention in Lebanon. So McCain has evolved his positions over the years. He hasn't been in lockstep with the Republican base. He hasn't been in lockstep with Bush, and I think he's going to try to play that up. He's going to say, no, I'm not for 8 more years of Bush. I've differed with the president. I'm a maverick. I'm going to go out in my own direction. I think that's what he's going to try to do tonight.
Okay.
I think actually George is absolutely right. McCain has a problem because the conservative base has a problem with the traditional Republicans, have a problem with the candidacy of Sarah Palin and McCain. I think we've got a little bit war going in the Republican Party, whereas the Democrats are really united in favor of Obama.
Okay. Hey, this time I really have got to wind it. But thank you very much indeed to both of you for being with us. I'm sure we'll talk again for the next debate.